Hello everyone and welcome to a new series that I'm calling Let's Talk About, which is basically just an excuse for me to gush about newly announced unreleased archetypes that I think are really cool and kind of go over them in case you haven't read the cards, and then show some potential builds I've been working on for when they do come out. This first inaugural episode is going to be about the Ashtra, who I saw and immediately fell in love with. If you have not read the cards, these are an archetype that is trap based, but also synchro. That's because, and we'll talk about the traps first because I think they're the most important piece of the actual game plan here. Each of the traps has an effect, a normal trap effect. This one's a reborn, this one pops a card, this one's a spell trap negate. But they also all can summon out as a level 1 tuner and then immediately synchro summon. So the idea is that you don't have a tuner in the main deck. Like, there's none of the new monsters or tuners. You set up your monsters, go to the opponent's turn, and then synchro with the monsters that you used as setup into our big boss monsters on their turn. Or, if you don't need to do that, you can just use the traps for their auxiliary effects. Which I think is super cool. Like, obviously, I'm a big fan of trap monsters in general, but I'm also a big fan of quick syncing. It's just thematically it hits. I love the aesthetic, all that good stuff. So let's talk about the monsters now, because these are how you're going to set up. And these are one of those rare archetypes that I guess they've been doing more and more lately, like Kashtira and Elf Node, where it's just inherent summons of big bodies. So all of these guys can be summoned out by revealing a set card to your opponent and then bouncing that set card to hand. So you don't actually lose a resource, you just have to give up some small amount of knowledge to the opponent. Basically, the restriction is there to make sure you play a significant amount of traps and or spells in the deck, because you don't have to reveal a trap, it can be a spell. So even if you set the field spell, we'll get to that later, you can reveal that and then summon out the Ashtra. Another big thing of note here before we get into the individual effects is that all of them are different types and attributes. You've got a level 8 Fire Fiend. I wonder if there's any cards that search level 8 Fiends. You've got a Worm. I wonder if anything searches Worms. Things like that. So it allows for a lot of creativity, which is something I'm here for. And there's no lock on any card in this deck, and we'll talk about why I think that's okay as we go on, but just be aware of that. You can play this with basically anything. So let's talk about individual effects now. So we'll start with Mikumari because I think she's the most important piece of the entire monster package, at least. So in addition to being able to summon by revealing, they can all do that. During your main phase, she can once per turn add a non-worm Ashtra from deck to hand. So that's any of the other three, because again, they're all different types. She's the only worm in the archetype outside of the extra deck. Then, if she is sent to grave as synchro material for an Ashtra specifically, you can target a normal trap in your grave and set it. That's a normal trap, not an Ashtra trap, which means that there is some level of synergy here with things like Karma Cannon, and there's even more than I've already talked about, but there's things like Karma Cannon or any other big explosive normal trap. Even just like trap holes, there's probably some synergy here, which is cool. It's very cool, and she is what I consider the quote-unquote starter. This isn't necessarily a one-card combo deck. Most trap decks aren't, but if we have a one-card combo, I would consider it Mikumari. Then we've got Yoa, who also is probably a 3 of, because his effect is during the main phase, set an Ashtra spell trap from your deck. That allows you to immediately get one of these guys online or get to the field spell, which you don't always want to do, but sometimes is good. And then his other effect is during the opponent's turn, you can modulate a level up or down by 1. That's because we have 2 level 7s and 2 level 8s. That means that as long as Yoa is on the board on the opponent's turn, any body, including the Yoa himself, because he can just target himself, allows you to go into either of the synchros, which are level 8 and 9, because the tuners are level 1, so it's always just, 1 up from what your main deck monsters are. So Yoa just lets you go into either of them easily, which is cool, because he also just sets up the synchro itself by setting a trap. Then we're on to our 8s. So where both of the 7s were searchers and setup tools, The 8s are disruption, and this is one of the really cool things about this deck that I like, is that it feels like an attempt to help trap decks go second a little bit better. Because these guys are disruption on your turn on an inherent summon. This guy kind of feels like Fenrir, if you want to think of it that way, where you just summon it out, it's an immediate threat going second. That's because Akasuna's effects are during the main phase, quick effect, send a trap from hand or face down on the field to grave to change all face up monsters your opponent controls to face down defense. So it's a Book of Eclipse on an inherent summon on a 3000 attack body, which is threatening going second. It's a big deal. And then on end phase, it can also set an Ashtra trap from deck, which means it's a really good end board piece because you can set a trap, book the board, and then synchro him off. And if you have Yoa, you can use either of your synchros out of that. Very, very good card. This card is scary as hell. And then lastly for monsters, we have our other level 8, which is Kuzuha, the Bewitching Deity Ashtra. This one's not as good, I'm a level with you, but she's probably good enough to justify a 1-of slot in the deck either way. Her primary ability is that you can target one card on the field for every 2 face-down cards on the field, destroy them. The problem is that it's not a quick effect. So that is a going second ability that requires you to stick multiple face downs unless the opponent is also a trap deck. She's pretty good against opposing trap decks, but otherwise it's just kind of Disneyland. And then her last effect is during your end phase you can set an Ashtra trap from grave. That's pretty important because of our field spell exactly. Our field spell is pretty unique. It's not like as mandatory for the deck as most decks' field spells are, but it's pretty cool. It allows you to target any number of face-down cards you control, add Ashtra cards from deck to hand with different names than each other, except the field spell, for whatever reason, I guess to prevent infinites, equal to the number of targeted cards that are still face down, then send those to the grave. Sounds great, that's a row to, 2, 3, even 4 cards, but you have to remember that it's an inherent -1 because you have to use the field spell itself, and it doesn't replace itself. It only replaces the things it sends, which kind of sucks, but what that means is that the deck really wants to set cards that gain value when sent to grave, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but things like Kuzuha and the synchro effect of Mikumari allow you to recycle the stuff that you send to grave anyways, so it's pretty solid. And that's not even it. You want to keep this on the field because it has one more effect that if a card becomes set on the field while you control an Ashtra and a face down, you can target a card on the field, return it to hand. So targeted bounce on something becoming set, and things like Mikumari allow you to set cards on the opponent's turn pretty readily. So that's it for the main deck. You summon big guys, it's relatively simple. You set traps, your big guys set traps, then you synchro on the opponent's turn. What we're synchroing into, well, to start, these are completely generic, which opens up a lot of options because you can generically go into any 6, 7, 8, or 9 synchro, which is pretty great. But our in-archetype ones are going to be some of the best targets because they're really good. For example, Mikumari no Mikoto, who is completely generic but not a starter, so it's not like a bridge, allows you on special summon, which is important because when it says on special summon instead of on synchro summon, it works when they are reborn, like through Ashtra Insect Poison. She allows you to foolish an Ashtra card from deck, then non-targeting send a card on field to grave. That's incredibly powerful, but it would be a lot stronger if we had a card that was good in the graveyard, which is what I'm hoping for Wave 2 for this deck. If we have something you want to send to grave that has value if you do so, then this deck gets really, really good. But as of now, it's still a good effect because you can just non-targeting send. And that's not even it. Its second effect is so much crazier because it says if your opponent activates a monster effect, you can target an Ashtra trap in grave or banishment and set it. Or if there are 3 or more face downs on the field, you can target any trap in your grave and set it. That's pretty crazy in a lot of decks, just being able to reset Karma Cannon turn after turn. And that's not once per turn. I need to make that clear. So every time the opponent activates a monster effect, you get to reset a trap. Crazy, crazy good card. That's our 8. And then we also have a 9, which is also really, really good. If this card is Synchro Summon, so he doesn't trigger on bringing him back, just be aware of that. If this card is Synchro Summon, you can banish any number of traps from grave to banish that many cards on the field, non-targeting again. So that can be, 2-3 banishes non-targeting on the opponent's turn in the middle of their combo. And then during the end phase, you can target 2 Ashtra monsters and or traps in grave or banishment. For each of them, either add it to hand or set it. Then if you did 2, this goes back to extra deck. So you can either choose 1 and keep the body on board to apply pressure, or you can choose 2 and get better follow-up, but you have to make the body again, or, just go into something else. Very good, versatile card, disruption, follow-up, all sorts of good stuff. So that's all of our bodies right now. Now I just want to talk about some builds that I have figured out with Ashtra that might end up being pretty good. The first one I wanted to bring up is that obviously these guys are going to be really good in just trap decks in general, but particularly Eldritch. And that's because the Eldritch traps all gain value in the graveyard. So that means that you can use the field spell as a 3-of to send Conquistador, Haquero, Eldlixirs, and transaction rollbacks and black goats as well, to search the Ashtra cards and then still gain value off of the things that you sent to grave with them, which is so cool. And you could do the same thing with, for example, Paleo would be perfectly fine to do the exact same thing with, because again, they all gain value coming out of the graveyard. So just one thought, this might be the best concept to work with for the Astras when they actually come out, is just play a trap deck that wants to be in graveyard with them. Now I want to talk about just kind of a non-bow with the deck that you might think is good at first glance. And that would be trap monster decks. Unfortunately, I love these guys. But specifically Odeon, this deck is not as good with as it might seem. Because you might think, well, the tuners, the traps, they all summon out as trap monsters, which can then trigger things like Statue of Anguish patterns, so there is some synergy there. And also, Temple of the Kings allows you to activate a trap that was set this turn, so if you set something off Mikumari or Mikumari no Makoto, then it's immediately live, and that's really good, right? The problem here comes with the fact that trap monster decks, and in particular Odeon, take a lot of Monster Zone and Spell Trap Zone space to actually function correctly, because you have to move things between the two zones. And so do the Astras. The Astras tend to take up about 3 to 4 Monster Zones and 2 to 3 back row zones to actually function correctly. Which means that you slap these two together and you just don't have any room to do either, basically. So keep that in mind, that this deck is going to take a lot of space on the board, so you want to make sure to pair it with something else that doesn't. For example, Sword Soul. So I mentioned earlier that Mikumari is a worm and is very searchable by certain things. So I made this deck which focuses more on the synchro summoning aspect of the Astras themselves, and the fact that Mikumari is a worm and is the best starter for the deck. The synergy here is really cool because they can both go into each other. For example, the Sword Souls can go into the Astras because you can normal Moye, reveal anything in hand, make a token, synchro into Chi-Xiao. Chi-Xiao searches Emergence. Emergence, as long as you have a synchro on board, which is the Chi-Xiao there, you can search any worm. So then you can search Mikumari, as long as you have anything to set in hand, you can set something, reveal it, summon the Mikumari, go into Ashtra, which is really cool. But what else is cool is that the Ashtra can also go into Sword Soul with a little bit of help from Tenyi Spirit Adhara. This guy's a level 1 tuner that just special summons for free at the start of your turn, so as long as you open him, you can special summon him out, then special summon the Mikumari, use her effect to add an Ashtra card, and then you can synchro her with the Adhara into an 8, And because both are worms, you can make things like Chi to just search the Sword Soul part of the deck. But also, and this is important even in other decks, you can make Boxia with her. Boxia requires a non-tuner worm. She's a non-tuner worm, which means that even in just Ashtra, you can use her and one of the Ashtra traps to make Boxia on the opponent's turn to spin a card back to the deck, which is a very potent disruption. And in this deck, there's just even more synergy with the Boxia there. So this is kind of probably my favorite build of the deck that I've figured out, or just basic synergy. This is probably not the exact build you're going to be playing, obviously. But just keep in mind that, yeah, you've got a worm, a spellcaster, a fiend, an insect, and there are things you can do with that synergize. So now I just want to show you like a super basic Ashtra combo just to close out the video, just so you can kind of see what they do. So for this, you're going to need the Mikumari and anything you can set. It literally doesn't matter if it's a spell, trap, quick play, field spell, anything. You can just set something, summon out the Mikumari by revealing it, use her effect to add Yoa. Then, because we still have the card, we can set it again, use Yoa, reveal it, summon out the Yoa, and then use his effect to set something. If what you have is something you want in the graveyard, you can go Astrashen and keep going from there, which is what I'll show you. But if you don't want to send anything to the graveyard, you can just set a trap and call it here, and that still allows you to synchro into either of our boss monsters on the opponent's turn. But we'll go Astrashen and just show a little bit extra here. So we'll set a card. Again, this is probably something you want to put in the graveyard. And we will add something else to send it. We're going to add Akasuna, which is kind of our best disruption, but you have to have something else in hand to reveal to summon the Akasuna if you do this combo. That's why you don't want to go this far, depending on what your hand looks like. But if you had something else to set, you can set it, reveal it, summon the Akasuna, on end phase summon out one of your traps, and then you're good to go. So that's kind of the basic combo 1.5 card, as long as you have anything to set. Again, it's not a one card combo deck, most trap decks aren't. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know if you like the new series, if this is something that's interesting to you, just hearing me gush about new archetypes that aren't even out yet. But I hope you liked it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.